For the longest time, people have been wanting DLC for Pokemon games, and on paper, that sounds like a great idea. I mean, who wouldn't think so? You get more content for a game that you enjoy. That's a good thing, right? And ideally, yes, that's a wonderful thing. But unfortunately, that ideal image of what DLC should be has been tainted by greed. DLC isn't done in good faith anymore. It's simply seen as a way to get even more money out of people who already bought your game. And in Pokemon's case, it honestly hasn't been that bad, or maybe EA and Activision have just set their bar that low, but regardless, it's a little surprising considering how greedy the Pokemon company can be. The formula we've been getting is, the game comes out, they wait a few months, they announce the DLC in 2 waves, one for one half of the year and the other for the other half, and that's pretty much it with some occasional free content. Nothing too major, just like events for Pokemon and stuff, and I think that's honestly a pretty good system. You get to experience the base game, then when you start to get bored of that, you got some DLC coming your way, then once you're bored of that, you have the other wave of DLC to look forward to. And by the time you have nothing left to do, a new Pokemon game should be coming out soon. It's a pretty good system, right? But this time is a little different. We're already getting DLC announced for Pokemon Legends ZA. The game's not even out yet. How are you already going to charge us even more for this already pricey game? Pokemon games being priced at $60 is already pretty outrageous, but the fact they have the audacity to announce DLC kind of pisses me off. It's a different story if a game is successful, the developers see that success, then go on to make even more content. That's awesome. I love when they do that because it means that they really want to bring more content to the game and make people happy. And they can also make a little bit of extra money doing so. It's good, honest, everyone wins, and there's no scumminess. But if it's already close to being done, why is it not just in the base game? It just feels scummy. Honestly, I think if they just waited for the game to already be out and then announce it, it wouldn't feel as bad. If they announced the DLC a month after the game was released, I think the majority of people would be pretty ecstatic. The only reason I can really see as to why they decided to do this way is because, as we know, Pokemon Legends ZA did get delayed. It was supposed to come out in 2024, but they pushed it back pretty much a whole year, and going based off of the previous schedule, this would be around the time that their first DLC wave would be coming out, or at least be announced, so this might not be the case of greed, but just of unfortunate timing. And even then, that's just a theory. If the game was pretty much close to being done in 2024, and they spent the extra year polishing it, but also working on the DLC, I think that makes sense. We did get the release date for Mega Dimension though. Apparently it comes out February 28th, 2026, which is only like 4 months after this game is out, so it does feel pretty early to announce it. For comparison, Sword and Shield came out November 15th, 2019, and the DLC was revealed January 9th, 2020, and the first wave of DLC finally got released on June 17th, 2020. So it was only 2 months after the game was out that DLC got announced, and people reacted way differently. So I think this was just a bad play on the Pokemon company's part. I guess they really wanted to be a part of this Nintendo Direct, even though they hold useless Pokemon Directs all the time, but whatever. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet waited a whole year to announce its first DLC, and then it released the next month. And I think that's because they really wanted to buy some time to work on Pokemon Legends ZA, which I think is a good thing, but it's kind of crazy how much longer we needed to wait for that one. So looking at all this information and given the circumstances, this situation does make a bit more sense. It doesn't mean I'm completely okay with it, for the record, but I have a better understanding, which I feel is important. But what I don't understand at all is why Mega Stones are locked behind Nintendo Switch Online and then some. To get Mega Evolutions for the Kalos starters, you not only have to have Switch Online, but you also have to participate in some ranked matches? What the fuck? You would think that maybe you would get them through a mystery gift, or even just through an update or something. Ideally, you'd get them in the base game from like Professor Sycamore or something, but making it locked behind a paywall, completely separate from the DLC, mind you, then proceeding to make it a limited time offer is so stupid to me. Maybe they will be available for everyone later on, and these people just get it early, but honestly, I kind of doubt it. I feel like they would have said that to get more people hyped up about it. Like, ooh, you can have this early before everyone else. Whoa, you'd be so cool. But they don't, which has me worried. What if you miss out on these events? Are you just never able to get them ever again? This whole debacle had me debating if Pokemon DLC was a mistake in the first place. And I think the only way to truly decide that is to take a look back at how things were handled ever since their introduction. We first got our taste of DLC during Pokemon Sword and Shield. And up until then, DLC for a Pokemon game was completely unheard of. We've always wanted it, and it was possible during the 3DS era, but they just never delivered on it. I don't know what changed when Sword and Shield came out. I guess they saw the potential in sales, but regardless of what happened, we did finally end up getting it. And Sword and Shield, like it or not, was just lackluster in every single way possible. It just fell flat, but it wasn't bad. It just wasn't good, if you know what I mean. It was just average. It feels like a really bare bones Pokemon game that doesn't really try to do anything to innovate. We have the wild area, and that's it. And the story was genuinely just awful. Like, it was just bad. I can't even like say anything. It's just bad. This game was in desperate need of extra attention, something to keep it floating. Yeah, sure, the sales were good, but it was a Pokemon game that released during the peak of the Nintendo Switch. It was bound to sell well no matter what. But sure enough, we eventually got our DLC. And some argue that it hard carries the game. And honestly, I agree, because no way in hell was anyone gonna spend more time in Pokemon Sword and Shield without it. I really enjoyed the Isle of Armor when it came out. I played so much of it. And because it released so soon after the game was out, I had time to beat the game, not lose interest, and want more content, and boom, there it was. Perfect. The Crown Tundra released later that year, and pretty much the same thing happened. I really loved the cave exploration. It added a fun new mode that you could replay over and over again, and it was also just great for shiny hunting, a new short story, and new Pokemon. While Pokemon Sword and Shield wasn't the greatest game, I think this was a perfect first execution of the DLC. I feel like fans got their money's worth, at least for the price of the DLC. Sword and Shield for $60 kind of feels like a ripoff. Actually, no, it doesn't feel like it is one, but that's $15 per wave, which I feel like is pretty good. The DLC stories, while short, were enjoyable. They weren't anything grand, which I don't think anyone was honestly expecting, but they were really charming for what they were. They truly did feel like an expansion on Sword and Shield, rather than just padding or a way to get some extra cash. The only real complaint I have about the DLC is the fact that they were selling us old Pokemon. It felt like they were being held hostage and we were being forced to pay ransom to set them free. Like, I'm glad that they're back, don't get me wrong, and I suppose this was the way to do it, but still, I didn't like it, especially after they lied about the reason they were cut, but that's a whole different rant. Scarlet and Violet were pretty much in the same boat. I can't speak as in depth about the DLC as I'd like to for these games, since I haven't completed them myself, but the fact I haven't heard anything bad about them speaks for itself. This is the Pokemon community. People don't like anything here. So for the strong lack of people saying anything bad about the DLC, I think that says a lot. It again gave us short little stories, new Pokemon, old Pokemon, new cosmetics, some mini games if I'm not mistaken, and they both add about 10 hours of content. So honestly, it's pretty good. And for the amount of DLC that I did play, I am really enjoying it, and will probably end up finishing it soon after months of procrastinating. The main reason I haven't beat it yet is because they took a whole year to release the DLC, and by then, I was pretty much done with playing Scarlet and Violet, so the interest wasn't really there anymore. Whereas in Sword and Shield's case, the DLC came out 2 months after, so I was still riding that hype train, or whatever was left of it anyway. But I still wish I could have finished it before making this video. I just wanted to strike while the iron's hot instead of waiting to make this video, and then end up never doing it at all. Anyways, point is, Pokemon for all that it's worth has a really good track record when it comes to DLC. They haven't had any disasters, or a ton of people overwhelmingly hating it. It's all been pretty positive. The DLC, while maybe not intentionally marketed as a replacement for third Pokemon versions, like Pokemon Platinum or Pokemon Emerald, they're definitely seen that way by the community. And at this point, it pretty much is true, since we haven't seen a third version since I guess technically the Ultra games. So does it deliver that same amount of value? I think I honestly do prefer the DLC route a lot more over buying a whole new game, mostly because it is cheaper. Instead of paying another $60 for a new copy of the game, then having to play all of it just to see a few differences is just not worth it. Fans can just spend $30 and expand their already existing save file. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I feel like third versions of Pokemon games never really feel needed. Like, it's cool, I guess, if you haven't played the games before, but it's more or less just a copy and paste with a few tweaks. Whereas DLC is a brand new experience that you get to play through right away. A lot of people, including myself, suffered the Ultra curse, at least that's what I'm calling it. We loved Sun and Moon, so we bought the Ultra versions and then never finished it. I have no idea why this is like a canon event for so many people, but literally everyone I ask says the same thing. It's kind of creepy. I did eventually break the curse and beat the game many years later, but not a lot of people went back and did that, and I can't blame them because if you played the game once, why do it again? And most of the differences only happen towards the tail end of the game, so for the majority of it, you're just in cutscene hell seeing things you've already experienced before. It's just not fun. With the DLC approach, you get to keep your progress, not needing to restart from scratch. Having the DLC added directly onto your adventure is just so convenient. Adding more playtime and content to a game instead of just copy and pasting it is the way better route to take. Arguably, yes, a third version is technically more playtime, but most of it is just wasting your time to get to the stuff you actually want to see. It's just mostly padding. The only gripe people have is that there isn't a definitive version anymore using this approach, but I think it isn't a huge deal because if it's too different, there would be a reason to play the original games, but if it's not different enough, people would ask what the point of the third version is. So either way, there's no real winning. But in this case, there is, because the Legends game started this trend where there's no more dual copies. It's just a one and done, not Pokemon Z and A, just Pokemon ZA. So even that argument's out the window. Again, I've never really heard any complaints about people feeling like the DLC was not worth the money. All I ever hear about is just how much fun it was and that it adds a lot to the game. I think Pokemon DLC does its job correctly. It adds content to your game for a relatively cheap price, it extends the game's lifespan, and they're always really fun. They also Nintendo always gave something players can look forward to in the future. The only thing they didn't provide was a fix to performance problems, but I think that the game at that point was far beyond saving. Plus, I think people would be pretty pissed off if in order to make your game run good, you had to buy the DLC. Wait a minute, isn't that what they're doing? Wait a minute, hold on. That's what they're fucking doing with the Switch too, what the fuck? Okay. Fuck, man. That's a whole different topic for another day. In Pokemon's case, I guess they're kind of also doing that with Legend ZA costing more on the Switch too. I don't know, man. The thing about DLC though, is that it did fragment the community just a little bit. Some players buy DLC, others don't. So not everyone is able to truly experience the game in its entirety, which is pretty sad, especially when people say that these DLCs truly are what make the game so great, especially in Sword and Shield's case. If you have that game and you don't have the DLC, what do you do on that game? I think taking a look at how other Nintendo titles handle DLC would be a good way to compare how Pokemon's doing. Zelda, more specifically Breath of the Wild, adds new quests, story segments, hard mode, extra shrines, and a whole dungeon-like expansion, all for $20 too. It's a pretty damn good deal. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe added a whopping 48 tracks, nearly doubling the game's size, all for $25. Again, that's really good. Smash Bros of course had the Fighter Pass, two of them both costing $25 each for a total of $50. It's pretty pricey, but for the amount of characters, stages, and new music, I think it's pretty worth it. I have not played Xenoblade yet, even though I plan to someday, but Xenoblade Chronicles 2 had an expansion pass that cost $30, which adds new quests, challenge battles, items, and a 20 to 30 hour standalone story campaign. It more or less just sounds like a whole new game packaged as DLC, so I think that's also really good. And Xenoblade Chronicles 3 did pretty much the same thing from what I'm reading. So when looking at Pokemon's DLC, they aren't anywhere near as impressive. They offer bite-sized adventures instead of whole meals other Nintendo titles offer, and they cost $30 to $35, so it's more expensive than the others too, which they shouldn't be if they aren't nearly as big. And most of the time, they make the game feel complete, rather than the game already being amazing and them just being the cherry on top. So in this regard, Pokemon really does need to pick up the slack. I still think the DLCs are good, but when compared to everyone else's homework, they just don't compare. Has Pokemon DLC set a precedent that harms future games? Yes and no. There's pros and cons to Pokemon DLC being a thing that sticks around. On the bright side, we get more content, the game gets a longer lifespan, and the next Pokemon game can buy more development time. But the cons to this is that we pretty much always have to spend a little extra to get the full Pokemon experience. Not everyone is able to get the DLC, and the main game might suffer because they might withhold content to use for DLC instead. But I do think that Pokemon DLC does more good than harm. Again, while not being as huge as some other games' DLCs, I still really enjoy playing through them. The problem isn't the content itself, but the amount of it. We want more. I honestly think this whole situation is just a matter of poor timing. Not only did Legend ZA get delayed, which caused the period of time between release and DLC to get kinda wonky, but then they chose to announce the DLC a little too early, which only made people angrier. If they just waited a little longer, people would have been really happy, because say, oh no, my favorite Pokemon didn't get a Mega Evolution in the base game. Then a month later, this Mega Dimension trailer drops, and you're like, so there's still hope, but now it feels like they're withholding content from us, which I honestly don't think is entirely the case. They probably had this cooking for a while and planned it as DLC from the start, so they still want to release it as DLC, but still. What I'm trying to say is that I think this was just a one-off thing, and that future Pokemon games will most likely follow what Sword and Shield along with Scarlet and Violet did. Wait a bit, drop a trailer, 2 waves of DLC, boom, next Pokemon game. I will say though, that Nintendo Switch Online Megastone thing is stupid, and that's not a matter of poor timing. That's just them being greedy, plain and simple. Anyways, let me know what you all think. Like the video, subscribe, follow my socials, go watch my Sword and Shield video or my Pokemon Pal World video, and I'll catch you all later. Bye!